Okay, good morning. We are continuing with Ta'arovis Kuf Hey. I apologize, we left off in the middle of Seif Tet. Okay, so we're going to continue. I'll tell you where we are in a second. Seif Tet, but what I just want to point out real quick is we started talking about, I think I maybe didn't mention it enough, about Blia from a Kli to a Kli. So if you look in the, again, it's in Kuf Hey. If you want to look it up, one reference would be the Shach in Kaf Bet. And so there, Sif Katan Kaf Bet in the Shach. We're still in Kuf Hey. I didn't go that far. It just points out that you're never going to have a bli of Isser from a Kli to a Kli when they're touching, even if it's burning hot, unless there's a liquid medium. There has to be something that'll carry it. It doesn't just because it's a solid piece of metal, it's inorganic and it doesn't move around, and it's just not going to jump from one to another. Anyways, that's the halacha. Whatever it is, and never without liquid. But everyone says that. That's just one good source. Now, also the Taz points out that this doesn't come up too often in our kitchens. It might come up sometimes in a factory, but if you have an item that has a blia of Isser, and now that item is mamish aser, because it wasn't batel b'shishim, but you have an item that's only has a blia of Isser, it will never aser a kli, because it won't go from there to the kli. The blia won't go, it won't get transferred, unless it's fatty. Anyways, you can see the Taz in Tav Zayin, and Ted Zayin. And one other quick Shach in Kaf Gimel, he discusses it. So the end of the Ramah said, if you have a dry piece of meat against a dry piece of meat, and it's an issue of blia, so it doesn't transfer. That's the Shulchan Aruch. But what if you have a dry piece of meat on a spit, a metal spit, or whatever, a skewer, or you have it's on a pan, a dry piece of meat, and they're touching. It's completely dry. Again, it could be a piece of meat that has a little bit of moisture in there, but it's still completely dry. It could even be a little bit of fatty. That's still called dry. If it's completely dry and it's touching, so we saw that the Ramah points out that it will leave if the meat is kosher, but the kli is treif, so the blia will go from the kli to the food. Not from a kli to kli, but it will go from kli to a food. But how far will it penetrate? So there, all the poskim, you see in the Shach, Pri Megadim, and more, if it's completely dry, it will only penetrate kedei klipa. Again, there is a bit of a machlokas on that, but basically, if it's completely dry and it does touch, all you have to do is remove kedei klipa v'zil. If it's even if we're talking about fatty items, it doesn't matter. However, if there is a little bit of liquid, a little bit of moisture, besides just being a little bit of moisture on the inside, but if it has any kind of liquid of some sort, so then it's a question. It's either going to be kedei netila or kulo. The Shach says generally kulo, but that's just okay. I just wanted to say that. Sorry. Now we are continuing in Tet, so we're in the middle of the Shulchan Aruch. So we were talking about in Tet all about salting. So if something is very salty, it could transfer. Again, read back. It's either shishim, klipa, or netila. Fine. That's if it's touching. Now the kol ze le'inyan chaticha. This is, I don't know, maybe halfway into the Shulchan Aruch part, and a little bit before the Chaf Tet of the Shach. V'kol ze le'inyan chaticha atzma shehaya chelev davukba. So everything we're talking about is if you have a piece of meat and the chelev is attached to it, so then one second. Right, the case is chelev is touching the shuman, And so therefore, even if you have to remove from there either kadei netila or kadei klipa. V'kol zilyan chaticha atzma shaya chelev davukba. Fine. So that's talking about only that piece of meat itself where it was touching. Wherever the two pieces were touching each other. That's where you have to cut off a piece because it was extremely salty. Ule inyan shar hachaticha shenimlechu yachad. Okay. Now, what about all the other pieces in the pan that are there, and or a plate? But it's very salty. So what's the halacha? Okay, right. We're talking about it's salty and it's cold. So what happens? Im ein bekol achas mehen bifnei atzma shishim levatal hachelev asuros. So then you have a bunch of pieces. You don't know which is which. So if by all the pieces it won't be batal b'shishim. So therefore, we're worried about fatty, and it has to be batal b'shishim. Each piece that it's touching. Otherwise, the entire piece becomes aser. You don't know which one it is. So then they all become aser. Ve'ein mitztarfin biyachad levatal hachelev. De'ein chelev mefafea mechaticha lechaticha belo'rotav. Now, each piece by itself that's touching the fat needs to be, that piece itself, what started out to be a kosher piece of meat, needs to be shishim kenegdo. It has to be at least 60 times. And it's not you can't be mistarif everything together because it doesn't, it's not, even though it's fatty, it's not going to mix or absorb properly or dissolve among everything on the plate. Okay. Okay. In other words, it's possible it does, but it's very possible it doesn't. So therefore, each piece by itself, if it's not shishim, there's no bittul. Now, if you don't know if it touched all of them, kulan asur, then they're all asur. But if you know it only touched one of them. Okay, so the first case is you don't know if it touched all of them or not, but it's there, so now you have to be worried. Maybe it touched all of them. V'im yadua shelo naga ela be'achas, v'ein yadua ezihi. But let's say you know that for sure it only touched one. You just don't know which one. So then kulan mutaros. Because if you know for sure only one became aser, then that's the normal halacha that we have, and we're going to understand this more later in the simanim. Kulan mutar, they all become mutar dechad betrei batil, because all you need to do is batil barov, and all you need to have is at least two that you know are kosher and one that's not, and they all look the same. So then chad betrei is batil. I feel. The isser itself, is different. No? If it's recognizable, yeah. So let's say you're talking, yeah. So yeah, we're assuming you know which one is, and you don't know which one you don't know which one to touch, but it only touched one. So of course you see the chaylev or chaticha, so you remove that one. Now you have three, let's say, or more. One of them for sure has a belia of iser, and the others for sure don't. So then we say chad b'trei batel. But if you don't know, they maybe all became aser, then you have to be machmar. Filohen chatichas haruya leischabed, even if they're all pieces that are ruya leischabed, it's still chad b'trei batel. Why? Normally we say that's the whole din of ruya leischabed. It's not batel filo be'elef, because that our cases only became iser by a blia. If it's an actual nevela and fatty piece of meat with a chaylev piece of whatever, two pieces of fat. One's chaylev and one is shuman. One's kosher, one's not kosher, and let's say they look exactly the same. So then we would say afilu be'elef labatil, because the actual chaylev is there. Our case is you remove the chaylev and it has only a blia into one of the pieces of meat, and then we don't say there's no isser of chumrav that it's not batel. Okay. Right. Fine. Let's keep reading the Haggah. V'yesh omrim d'kol melicha eino oseret rak kedei klipa. Now there is an opinion that no, doesn't matter what, melicha never is oser more than a klipa. That's more makel and against what we just learned in the Shulchan Aruch. In the Shulchan Aruch we learned it could be kedei netila and it could be kulo. This is a makel opinion that the Ramah quotes, that it's only kedei klipa maximum in all cases, and that's not the halacha. Even according to the Ramah, it's not the halacha. He just points it out. Now, we already established we don't know the difference, but we're not machalik halacha, because we're not sure really, and between a fat and lean piece of meat. So therefore, noagin l'shar b'chol melicha b'shishim. So therefore, anytime even we're talking about, right, cold salt, we always are machmer for shishim. Come on, by bishul. Like by bishul, we go by shishim. The imika shishim bein hakol biyachad neged kol hachaticha shachelev davuk ba az hakol shari. That you need that, the two items that are touching each other must be 100% more than shishim of heter, what we said already. Milvad ota chaticha sha'isr davuk ba, more than that piece of fat or isser that it's touching. Mil. Oto achaticha sha'isr naga ba tzarich klipa me'at. But where it's touching, you are going to need at least klipa. Right? Ve'im eni yodea eizen naga hakol shari. Here he writes, if you don't know which one it's touching, then they're all mutter. Ve'im ein shishim.
That's the opposite of the machaber.
No, so the Shach says, wait a second. He clarifies the Ramah. The Ramah means a case like the Machaber, that if you don't know which one, but you do know for sure that most of them were not touched. So it's basically the same as the Machaber, because then it's Batel Barov, but it must be where most of them are not, you know it didn't touch most of them. Like, you know, there's a big tray and you know it touched maybe a few of them on the side of the plate or the side of the table. Okay. So then in that case, you don't have to assume, maybe they got completely all mixed up. Okay. Naga hakol shari, as long as rov not. Im ein shishim hakol aser, and if you don't have shishim, then it's all aser. Ve'ein l'shan aser minhag. Ve'af al pi sheish baze k'tzat kula im haya ha'eser shamein umefafeya. Mikol makom yesh lismach b'kiyai gavna adivrei amakilin.
No, the kula is if you're making melicha like bishul, so that you could now have it in the shishim. That's cool.
Boy, I don't know anymore. Mikol makom af al pi sheish baze k'tzat kula. Im haya eser shamein umefafeya, that it's, even if it's shamein, it could be batel b'shishim. I'm not sure, maybe. Mikol makom yesh lismach b'kei gavna divrei hamakilin. Let's keep reading. V'sevir eluhu de'ein oser b'melicha rak kedei klipa. And in this case, you only have to remove kedei klipa, kedei shelo nitztarich l'sha'ar ben eser shamein l'kachush. So I think the Ramah is saying normally we're not machalik between shamin and kachush, and we treat them everything as it's fatty. But in this case, by malicha, he's saying if you're not sure and it looks like it's kachush, if it looks like it's kachush, you could be mekel that it's kachush. And in this case, only take klipa. So if you believe, you look at it and you say this is a very lean piece of meat, then all you have to do is kedei klipa. Fine. Mikol ze be'isr sheshayach bo shumnanit kagon chelev otzir v'chiyai gavna. Okay, so that's everything until now. We've been, until now we've been talking about things can be fatty, and then therefore, okay, you might need to do kulo. Aval be'isr she'ein bo shamnunit klal. Whenever we're talking about an isser let's say, I don't know, vegetables, and there's no issue of fat whatsoever. Could go on chametz b'Pesach as an example. L'kuli alma malicha eno seret rak kadei klipa. So anytime there's for sure no shamen, we go back to it's never going to be worse than kadei klipa. Okay, I'm just going to skip to yesh omrim. The behefsid meruba yesh lahatir b'malicha ayidei klipa afapi shekavarna gulishar kol malicha b'shishim. Filu be'eser kachush. So now some say behefsid meruba. You could do klipa. Yesh lismuch al zeh be'eser kachush she'eno ela minhag l'shar b'shishim. It's kind of, I don't know if you want to use the word redundant, but we're doing a little bit of chazara here, and he just points out by hefsid meruba also you could be makel that if you think it's kachush, and therefore it's only kadei klipa. Aval lo be'eser shamen shemedina tzarich shishim. But I'm not makel when you know it's fatty by malicha. Then you need to do bekulo. It is oser bekulo. Okay, sorry about that. Let's go to yud. Okay. Where is this going on? Yeah, let's go to yud. Bameh devarim amurim. Now, what we've been saying until now, again, this is the Shulchan Aruch talking. Kisha iser ve'heter shnei meluchim. When they're both salty. So I'm not going to repeat what we'd said before, but we notice there's a little bit of a tumult in the Achronim how to understand parts of Tet and Yud about being salted. So this is everything we said now is for sure true if both pieces of meat are very salty. Va'afilu ha'isr maliach ve'heter tafel. But then he says, and even if the isser is salty, because if the isser is salty, then that can take out from itself and impart into something else, not vice versa. And the heter is tafel, saying, and even if it's not shneim over here, but only the heter is absorbing from the isser, which is not, and the heter is not salty. Aval, ima heter maliach, the isser tafel, eno tzarich ela hadacha. So either both are completely salty, or it could be only one is salty. Right? This is what was bothering. Okay, so everybody with the shach. Okay, whatever that we learned yesterday. But if the heter is the one that's salty, then it's never going to take and extract from the isser and put it inside itself. And therefore, you don't need to do anything but just rub it off and rinse it off. Okay. Rinse it off, really, because you have to take off the mamashas of the salt. What?
Is this an ID that started with love and bolea, or was just in a
I don't know, let's go on. V'yesh osrim im nogim ze bazeh v'yesh lahakel b'makom hefsed. Okay. And the Ramah here seems to be a little bit machmer. If they're touching each other, exactly what is referring to, but all the poskim point, even if the heter seems to be the one that is the spicy one, the salted one. But the Shach, Kafachayim, and the Ramah elsewhere, Al Paskin, 100%, that even when there's no Makom Hefsed, in other words, Lechatchila, the only time you can have a transfer of Isser is if the salty one is the Isser one. If the salty one is not the Isser one, it'll never be a transfer. That's the clear halacha, even according to the Ramah elsewhere, and the final psak of the Shach and Kaf HaChaim and others. Okay, so you can put that Ramah in parentheses. Yud Aleph. Okay, so now what we're saying, maybe it makes a difference. Which one is the salted one and which one is the non-salted one? Because we said it really needs to be the Isser, that's Maliach. So hold on. Ve'eter tafel, she'imu shamein oser ad she'ebo shishim levatlo. And that therefore, if there's fat over here, then you need shishim. Or if it's no fat whatsoever, then we learned it would be kedei klipa. Dafka keshahaya isra maliach lamata. Because again, it's a little similar to the heating concept of tata gavar. This is only going to work if the Isser Maliach is on the bottom. And as we mentioned, that was one of the explanations in the with the Shach yesterday. So it's only an issue when the Isser Maliach is on the bottom, the Heter Tafel Lamala, and the non-salted heter is on the top. Mishum de Tagava. Aval im haya heter tafel lamata. But if the heter tafel is on the bottom, via Isra Maliach is lamala, ena oser ela kadei klipa. So then it still is, but only kadei klipa, which is similar to how we learned by Cham, the same concept. Haga, v'yesh cholkim, and some argue, ve'omrim, the malicha ein chilok imu lamala o lamata v'hachi nahug. But the Ramah is actually machmer, and he says it doesn't matter which is on top and which is on bottom, because it's all cold. That whole principle of Tatagavar only matters by heat, but by cold it doesn't matter. Okay, Yoreh, Irbet. So now, here you have pots that became treif from the goyish pots only through malicha, let's say. But you want to make even though, right, so they were used for malicha, and you want to now make gavina in them. It's cold. You put your gavina and it forms. It curdles and whatever it does. That's not a problem.
Because we'll be drawing out from a clay with salt.
He in the Kaf HaChaim writes, even if the Isser Balua is Minatara, and even if it was Ben Yomo, and some say, Lachatchila, you should do Hagala on it. That's what he says. On this case. Was the case, I think the case is, even if it was used with hot. No. Yeah. Even if it was used for treif heat, it would still be the same halacha, because the gavina is only cold. And even if there was salt that absorbed, it doesn't come out. It's not a problem. Right. So yeah, I think even if it was balua with isser with hot, it doesn't matter. And yeah, that's. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Let me just say it over again clearly. The nimlachu is the gavinot. Even if the cheese is very salty, it's still not going to be a problem, because the salt. Everything here is cold now. You're making cold cheese with salt, and it won't pull out isser that was balua in the kli, even if it was put in there with heat. Right? It's a treif pot, but it won't. The salt won't pull it out. Fine. Haga vehu adin im nimlach heter b'sha'ar kli isser, and that's also true. Yeah. Okay. Anytime you have any kli of isser, with any pot, and you want to salt it, it's not going to do anything. Even if there's no holes involved, the salt cannot pull out blia's isser from a kli. It could through heat, but not through salt. The ein maliach keroteach kolkach. So, in other words, all these expressions in Chazal, maliach keroteach, kavush kemavushal, it's to a point. I don't know if you can use the word take it literally or not, but it's limited application, that's for sure. It's not exactly the same. It's maliach keroteach under certain circumstances, so it's not exactly. Lahaflit mina kli masha balua betocho. Salt is never going to pull out from the kli and put what's in there. V'davka b'di'evid. This is only b'di'evid, lechatchila aser, but lechatchila we don't do this. One more? No. Okay, so we'll stop here. We're at Yud Gimel.